Let go. This hangout on air is live. So much has changed with these Google Hangouts. We can't put that little strip along the bottom that says, I'm so fancy, my name is. So you're just going to have to deal with the verbal introduction. And this is the Oneness Talking Point with Melanie Brockwell from Oneness Business, the business of simply being. How's that for a little motto? Does that float your boat? The other one was where everything is on the table. Because I really like that picture, that analogy of all of the truths about our wholeness being equally valuable. And each one is a card that sits on the table, right, all together next to each other, and none of them has more value or less value. That sense of you need to turn that one upside down because it's a negative thing, or you need to flip that one so that it has less power. Excuse me. I don't get into that way of playing the self-identity wholeness game. That whole psychodynamic division of what makes me me. Some of it are skills that I learn, and some of it is genetic traits or characteristics that I've inherited or have been imprinted, in the early years. I understand it. I understand its appeal, I think, is the main thing. I understand the appeal of wanting to put all your ducks in a row. When you go to the post office and there's a slot for everything. We love that. We love that there's a place for everything. And we love the idea that we're on our way somewhere. And even if we don't exactly know what it is, we'll know it when we get there, because it will feel like this, or because it will look like that, or because there'll be evidence, people will be nice to us or kind to each other, or there'll be more oxygen, or, we'll have some proof, something that demonstrates that we're there. And we keep asking, are we there yet? And that sense of where do we fit, as well as where do we belong? What is our purpose? What is our mission? With that vision of what it will look like. Even if we don't know what it will look like, we know what it will feel like, because we know the proof will be that people are nice to us and kind to each other, and whatever it is for you. We'll judge people on their auras and not their resumes and bank accounts. Whatever the story is for you on what will be different, and how you will know. How you will know that it's time to stop fighting. How you will know that it's time to stop trying to change the world, because the world is where you want it. In that sense of that point of awareness, of global enlightenment, of conscious evolution. There are lots of ways of describing that end point, that plateau. And so in the meantime, on the way there, we feel like we need somewhere to put all of these feelings and situations and experiences. And we need a story about why it feels the way it does, why it looks the way it does, why it seems the way it does. And so we have these concepts like transformation, and we tie them to our purpose. We say, this mosquito. We say, the things that I have been through taught me these lessons. If I also teach you these lessons so that you don't need to go through what I've been through, then my purpose, my mission, my gift is to transform the world. I just had some cinnamon tea. It's making me a bit phlegmy. Let's have some more. And so in that way, the story about what we've been through and all that pain and suffering as a means to an end is a virtue, you know, the martyrdom of transformation, the martyrdom of learning, so that you might become a teacher. I mean, I was even reading some academics' take on the sixth patriarch of Chan, of Zen in China, Hui Neng, who I just love. And oh no, that's right. It was the sutra that he is said to be the author of, which is disputed. That's why I say he is said to be the author of. And it's got all this introductory material. It's written by the Buddhist Translation Society, and something about the notion of Buddhism can only be taught by Buddhists and not academics, because the Buddhist, especially the master, has suffered, has you know, had the thought torture of living the experience of Buddhism, quite possibly under another master, and then keeps alive this lineage of Buddhist experience and knowing, of not knowing, that exists in the world through suffering, you know, through the learning, the suffering of learning. So it seems even in Buddhism, I find these concepts of evolution, of the process of enlightenment. I mean, it doesn't exist everywhere in Buddhism. There are lots of Advaita, Vedanta, Sankara, I think it is, or Sankanara, sometimes it's written. There's lots of explanations of oneness that coincide with my understanding and experience, which doesn't include suffering and evolution and transformation. And I think, you know, just the concept of transformation is one of those accepted without question that it's good, accepted without question that it's part of this story. You know, the same way that if you talk about angels, then you must believe in God, a monotheistic, generally male, all-powerful, interventionist God. And I just think all of those assumptions go unspoken. And if they do, they do. But they don't for me. I like etymology, the origin of words. I like authorship and finding out the web of context that allows something to exist the way it's perceived to exist. I find that fascinating. And I guess for me, when I look at something, that's what I see, is the ever extending explanation and interconnection and entanglement of all things. So following this line of the etymology of a word takes you to a cultural place, say 14th century France, which wasn't France now. Like there would be a whole different map, not just a political map of lines that were drawn because of wars and power and churches, etc., but also an actual geographical map would be different. The height of the mountains and where the rivers are and what trees were growing there and what medicines were being used, and none of it is the same. There's no France that has carried through time unchanged. And even at 1 second in time, all of the concepts and perceptions and preconceptions of France are varied. There's no agreeable definition or picture or cultural concept of France, even in one moment in time. And so I think about first the word transformation, a change of form, a change of shape. I think about how do we draw an outline around something unless we have a cultural concept of what sits inside the outline and what exists outside the outline. And each cultural concept will be different. Even within a cultural concept, there will be individuated variables of what belongs inside and the meaning of what is inside, the label of what is inside that shape. And that's all very I don't know, it's all very conceptual, so it's difficult to picture what that means. But say, take an orange, the piece of fruit, and put it in 17th century Europe. Where does it grow? Who has access to it? Who doesn't have access to it? What does it mean religiously? What does it mean spiritually? What does it mean economically? What does it mean to a 6-year-old in a poor factory? What does it mean to a 60-year-old? Do they even have 60-year-olds? Like just the one object, the one outline of a thing that we think we know. the idea that we can make it concrete and it means the same thing to everyone in everywhere at every point in time. We know that that's not true. We know that we're making assumptions even about the orange. Are we saying as it's still on the tree, or are we saying when it's sitting in the market? And is it in the stall with the woman that hates us, or is it in the basket of someone going by that we want to thieve from? You know, is it in our basket? Is it full of bugs? Is it old and moldy? Is it kicked under the horse's stall? You know, has it been traded for a slave's life? What context? Because we didn't get any other information. We just said an orange, and we've automatically imagined in our preconceptions of all of what that means that we know what an orange is. And yet it can mean so many things within its own context. Have we just eaten and we couldn't eat another thing? Have we not eaten for 3 days? Have we never seen an orange before? Does it remind us of home, somewhere that we haven't been for a very long time and feel ostracized and yearn for? Are we allergic to oranges? And so that concept of transformation, you know, the notion of the change, changing the world, changing people, those things of form to be transformed are never concrete. They're never fixed and unmoving. They're always in a state of change. And so the boundaries we draw around them don't actually exist. They just make our experience of them contextual. They give us a point of reference. And so how can we change something that has no form except the form that we have given it? How can we impose an act of change upon something that is in a constant state of change? Especially when the I, or you, in that equation is included. There's no end to me. There's no fixed concreteness to me that is unchanging. There's no separation of me from. So how can I transform another form when even I don't exist as a shape? I think of it like a fountain. It's the same water. And as it comes out of the fountain, it gurgles and calms and creates oxygen, and it's beautiful, and it has shape, and it feels new in every moment. And yet it's the same water. It's the same ocean. There's no one piece of ocean that can act upon another piece of ocean. There's no fixed shape coming out of the fountain that's separate from all of the rest of the water. All of the things that we want to hold on to that exist in our perception of that orange also exist in our perception of me or you. All the water and molecules, all the things we like to think of as physical, air and nutrients, and none of that can be divided and cut off and separated. It's in a constant state of fountain. And when you investigate the physics of those things that we assume are physical in our perception, we understand that the positive and negative space of physical and non-physical are also part of that perception. They're not fixed. If we existed in time a bit speedier, then the things that are physical would be less physical in our perception. It's not the thing itself that makes it physical. It's a type of experience we're having that makes it physical. It's the perception, the fountain, the oneness that allows for an experience, the oneness that's having the experience of some things as physical and some things as not. And although I wouldn't deter you from your experience of physical and non-physical, from your experience of soul and body and mind, from your experience of transforming the world, although I would never discourage you or admonish you, I can't have those experiences. They don't make sense in oneness. When I'm asked, what do you do for people? Or what's your gift? I don't have a gift. I am a gift. The wholeness of all that is, that's having the experience of this thing perceived as me in this and every moment of change. But I don't exist as a separate thing, so I can't bring separate things. There's no such thing as influence or impact. I say it's not a ping pong universe. We're just one beautiful ocean. And that oneness is having perceptions, is having experiences. And I don't know what it wants for us. I don't have any evolutionary principled outcomes that we can all attach ourselves to and hope for and work toward. I don't want to have power over you. I don't want to transform you. I don't want to teach or learn. The art of allowing and simply being trusts that the ocean is having the experience that it needs to have. And I guess there's also, it's kind of this double-edged sword. If I really wanted to transform the world, I would do what I'm doing anyway, which is accept and acknowledge the wholeness of all that is. Because nobody's going to listen to me if I'm telling them that they're wrong. Nobody's going to trust me if I don't trust them. And if I'm longing to make them different, making them the cause of problems or obstacles to my solution, then I don't trust them. And I guess I've had a lot of experiences of being in situations where, people said things and part of me kind of went, oh, how's that other person going to react, But they were just going down a different route to the same place that I would end up. And it made me realize we just all do it differently. And people respond to different routes. And we're all in this same room witnessing these different routes, pretending to be separate points of identity and awareness, when really we're just a fountain. And the allowing, that art of allowing, that suchness, isn't a passive form of existence. It's being in that room, having that reaction, doing what you're told. And when I say doing what you're told, I'm not saying there's a voice in your head that says 3 steps to the right. I mean, you go to the toilet when you need to go to the toilet and you answer the door when you need to answer the door, doing what you're told. Instead of separating it out into the politics of everyday life or the business of business, or the spiritual obligations, and trying to find a balance between all of these things that you're trying to get right or fit into your life. Doing what you're told is making a plan if that feels like what you need to do. Sleeping when you need to, trusting your dreams when you need to, talking to a psychiatrist when you need to, getting an operation when you need to. It's doubting yourself when you need to. Doing what you're told. I guess it's a trust thing. Even that sense of you are exactly where you need to be in each and every moment isn't a passive thing. Doesn't mean you have to endure and suffer the reality of where you are. That's just part of the context. So what are you being told to do? What are you being asked to feel? To think? None of those things are separate in your instructions. And so I guess my way even if I wanted to transform the world, would be to do what I'm doing because I can't see all of the information as part of the fountain. And so I trust the fountain. I trust the ocean. I trust oneness to give me the instructions that I need. I don't need to see the evidence of why I was asked to have that conversation or pay that bill or not pay that bill. I don't need a environmental upgrade in order to trust that my instructions are on purpose. I don't need some cultural concept of optimum health to prove to me that the universe is giving me the right instructions. If my intuition says to do it, if my sense of being, of wholeness, asks me to, and they're the smallest things and the biggest things. So they're making the noises, asking the questions, buying the products, eating the foods. They're the entirety. And you may not see, like if you've watched those movies where there's all these people and they're part of this one story and none of them know how they're connected. But you get to watch it because you're watching the movie, and the movie's making it very clear that when this person does that and leaves this here, another person comes along and it allows for that to happen. And sometimes it's a comedy of errors and other times it's, allows people to meet that wouldn't otherwise have met. We tell those stories. And yet we have these concepts of transformation that ask us to say this prayer or do this act or follow these principles in order to get evidence of the universe giving you a pat on the back, in order to get evidence of being part of the conscious evolution on the planet. And I guess for me, the idea of evidence kind of takes away from that trust. I don't know what the impact is of the things that I'm asked to do. It's not my purview. For other people it is. I'm sure there are people that it's their experience to know. But I can't talk about them or that. I can only talk about this. The oneness talking point. As it makes sense to me, as I'm asked to speak, all of the words that come out of my mouth are part of those instructions. The tiredness, the questions I ask, and that trust extends so far that if I have a wave of emotional experience that doesn't seem connected to anything that's going in my so-called concrete life, I have that experience for no other reason than because I trust it. It's not a means to an end. It doesn't have to be a catharsis. It doesn't have to be an empathic experience that's helping somebody else I don't need a reward for it. I don't need a reason for it. Unless my experience asks the question, why is this happening? And then I will follow that if that's what I'm asked to do. So even if I believed and followed transformational concepts and principles, it still wouldn't be about evidence and activism. It would be about trust. And that's enough. I've got a visitor. I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Happy transformation.